P.I.E.C.E.S began in Ontario 18 years ago. It is a made-in-Canada, holistic, person and care partner-directed learning development model. It increases capacity at the individual, team, organization, and system levels. It supports the care of older individuals living with complex chronic physical and mental health needs, which include the neurocognitive disorders and associated behavioral changes. Leadership champions are vital for successful implementation and sustainability of knowledge translation strategies. We undertook such an initiative and called it the Kamloops Integrated P.I.E.C.E.S Project. The following stories highlight the learnings from its leaders and champions.
Thank you, Mary Lee, for sharing some of your father's and family's story. I think many people can actually relate to it. Your father, your dad, developed a dementia with responsive behaviors while he was living at home with your mom.
Yes.
And like many older people, this was complicated by a number of medical problems. He ultimately required admission to an acute care hospital for treatment of his behavioral symptoms. And then he transitioned to a tertiary mental health hospital and a geriatric psychiatry inpatient unit. And then finally moved to residential care.
Yeah.
So suffice it to say, he had many moves throughout the healthcare continuum. What was that experience like for your dad and your family?
In a word, overwhelming. I have one sibling, and she lives out of town, and my mom was his primary caregiver. He was originally diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then came the dementia. And so she was adept at dealing with the Parkinson's needs, but as his dementia progressed, we were all very overwhelmed. We didn't know how to proceed, and at times we wondered if it was dementia or was he just deliberately being contrary. So it was very overwhelming, and it became quite clear after a few months that my mom was not capable of dealing with his behaviors that were increasingly getting more scary, actually. Yeah, and dangerous to himself and maybe other people.
So what kind of approaches or support helped to ease the transitions through the system?
We reached out to Interior Health, and it made our journey so much easier because we got understanding and sympathy and plans and ideas in place that we could agree with and understand, and that made all the difference. He got in the system. He started off having some people come in during the day to look after him. He started going to the daycare program through Ponderosa Lodge, which was also amazing, and he loved it. And that was a surprise for us, and because he wasn't ever a person that liked to play games or do things like that. So the fact that he loved that program was really helpful. It helped him also understand that my mom couldn't care for him every day, all day. And it let them get away from each other, which was really important. So we started that process. He went to daycare, and then he got increasingly worse with the dementia. And he was having the sundowner syndrome at night, which the nurses in the hospital got a full eyeful of, and I think realized and spoke to the doctor on his case that we can't send him home with his wife. And thankfully, he was admitted to Hillside Center, and that's where the P.I.E.C.E.S program started. And I looking back, and I talked this over with my mom, I can honestly say that his entry into long-term care and his adjustment to that was definitely helped and was the catalyst. The P.I.E.C.E.S program was the catalyst to make that happen. I don't know where we would be today without Hillside and your program and your involvement in his care.
I'm glad to hear that it's worked out okay.
The story that we have just heard is becoming much more common in healthcare because of the aging demographic. We are seeing more older adults throughout the continuum of care who are frail,
yet have complex physical, cognitive, and mental health needs associated with behavioral symptoms simply because we are living longer. These problems can be very challenging for families, nurses, care staff, and physicians to assess and treat, regardless of where people are in the healthcare continuum. It's crucial that we have a comprehensive approach to understanding and treating mental health illnesses and responsive behaviors in order to provide the best possible care for people. If we don't, then we potentially put not only healthcare providers' safety at risk, but also that of the patient. An example of this may be the inappropriate use of antipsychotic medication for some behavioral symptoms. P.I.E.C.E.S is a Made in Canada learning initiative that meets this need. It provides a framework to help learners understand changes in a person's behavior while promoting practical tools for collaborative problem solving and care planning. It helps to highlight risk issues and guides us to think about causality in an organized way, which is what the acronym P.I.E.C.E.S actually stands for. It helps us avoid jumping to conclusions and puts the person and their family front and center. We've implemented P.I.E.C.E.S in a variety of healthcare settings within our health authority and across parts of British Columbia, and further spread is planned. As a result, many of us now share a common vision, language, and approach when faced with these complex healthcare problems, which helps with transitions across the care continuum. Developing P.I.E.C.E.S champions amongst our leadership has been the key to its sustainability over a number of years. We have no doubt that it has led to a significant change in culture and overall better care for this very vulnerable group of people.
We did a project charter. The drawback was the money. It is not without cost to train staff. So what I had to do was convince senior leadership, so that's the VP level and the CEO level, that this would pay back, right? We talked to residential care and asked if they would be willing to be partners with us. We talked to our medical sister hospital, the closest one, which is Royal Inland Hospital, and asked if they would be interested in participating. We took it as the community. How does the community impact patient care? So we brought everyone that we could think of, community mental health, home health. We brought everyone that we could and developed the Kamloops demonstration project. And that was our charter, to have every aspect where the patient could meet or could be impacted in their health journey, to have them come and be part of the learnings and be part of the team that would influence their care process.
The workshops really are a foundational part of the P.I.E.C.E.S program because participants arrive and are introduced to the framework and how it applies to their clinical setting. But the workshops also allow the participants to recognize the vast knowledge and experiences they already have. So it's really helping them to organize that knowledge and experience in a consistent approach and language to providing care for the persons receiving care.
One of the key takeaways, I think, is really using a consistent language and framework for how we approach issues and challenges.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing we really do focus in on is how important the team is. The team being anyone who is within the clinical area, the area the person's receiving care, as well as the person receiving care and the family or significant others involved in that person's life.
As healthcare professionals, we try to fix things. So it's really important to not jump to conclusions, not use assumptions, but be curious and really understand that all behavior has meaning. And it's up to us as healthcare professionals to figure out what that meaning is.
And they really can make a difference in the lives of the people they're caring about.
Without the support of senior leadership, I would not have been able to dedicate the time and resources to this project. But from a manager's perspective, my role has been to ensure individual care staff is carefully selected, prepared, and provided with time to attend our sessions. Once staff has been educated, it is also part of my role to encourage and ensure the use of the framework at our sites and to provide staff with the time, the tools, and the space to gather together to complete the assessments. The P.I.E.C.E.S framework has had an incredible impact on the care planning processes we have implemented for all residents with complex care needs. Sometimes the care planning process can be seen as a top-down or driven by one discipline approach, but the P.I.E.C.E.S framework and process provides a voice to all levels of care. This has greatly enhanced our conversations and is reflected in the detail of our care plans. The goal of the P.I.E.C.E.S session is to understand input from various sources, make sense of the complexity, and to develop a workable plan.
Essentially, we recognized early on that certain supports would be needed to ensure the sustainability of the project. These supports included appropriate resource allocation, such as funding for training and replacement of staff. In selecting staff who would be trained as P.I.E.C.E.S educators, we understood the importance of this investment and chose these individuals carefully, focusing on people who could be released from their regular work and had the potential to be effective in the facilitation role. Our training sessions for both educators and learners were inclusive of various professional disciplines and programs, thereby engaging stakeholders across the continuum of care. We understood the role that management and site leaders play in sustaining a new initiative. Inevitably, there will be competing priorities for resources and energy, which we knew would be a challenge to the initial uptake and sustainability of the project in the long term. So we met with systems and operational leaders initially and again several months later to discuss the value of the training, successes, and ways we could work together towards a common goal. We recognized the role that critical mass plays in the adoption of a new approach, so we planned training sessions with that in mind. What we did find is that there is naturally more interest and leadership support for the P.I.E.C.E.S approach in areas that provide services to the older adult population exclusively. So our training efforts have focused largely on these programs in order to build a critical mass and optimize our investment and opportunities for synergy. We formed a steering group which included leader representatives from across the continuum of care. This group met regularly to guide and monitor the energy of the project. These group members were and continue to be tireless in their efforts to be champions for the project.
I truly believe that we have brought value to clients in BC now that it is a BC-wide accepted training. I'm glad to have been part of the team that has brought P.I.E.C.E.S to BC. I am very glad to be part of that team. And our future needs to focus on research. How has this added value to our clients and their families?